So let me bring in my friend Chip Patterson, CBS Sports.com, Cover 3 podcast. We get to talk to him in our normally scheduled time because there is no Champions League football this afternoon. So we thankfully we have the international break. So let me just start there, and then we'll talk about, there's some great games nationally.
With the international break? We're going to start at the international break?
Exactly. We should have one of those in every sport.
Yeah, sure.
No, we shouldn't. We actually shouldn't. Clemson right now looks pretty good. I thought they did probably the least they could have done at Florida State. Special teams continues to be a bit of an issue for Dabo Swinney. Miami, for the second straight week, went, I can't even, I mean, it's sawing a woman in half, the magic tricks they're doing. And SMU won again. Mm-hmm. So SMU does not play either Clemson or Miami, and frankly, the rest of their schedule looks fairly comfortable. Clemson's, the rest of their schedule, I'm not going to say is really comfy, but I think they can negotiate it. Miami is another matter because Miami will play with their food and Mario Cristobal is still the coach. But 11-1 Clemson versus 12-0 Miami and Charlotte, 11-1 SMU. All three teams in the playoff, right?
Why? All right, hold on. So have you tried to figure out the tiebreakers in that scenario?
No, I have not tried to figure out the tiebreaker in that scenario.
11-1 SMU is 8-0 in ACC play.
So is Clemson and Miami.
Play. That's right.
Well, I'm not sure it would matter, except if SMU were to lose. Like, I think that if Clemson wins 11 in a row after Georgia, and whether they're in the ACC championship game or not, aren't they a playoff team?
I would think so.
Right.
I mean, yeah,
okay.
There's a lot of factors. Like, basically, let's start right back at the beginning of your premise. Like, I'm trying to paint a picture of three ACC teams, and it's very easy, especially here, to be able to look at it as like us versus the world. So Let me at least get you on the other side of that fence where like Notre Dame could go lose to Army or Navy. Because Army and Navy are both really, really good football teams.
No question.
Get Notre Dame out the paint. The Big 12 continues to cannibalize itself, and every single time you think you've got a new front runner, that team starts to trip over itself. I mean, not to go all, Mr. Name rhymes with Schmamarty, but the one bid league is the Big 12. So if Notre Dame's not there, and if the Big 12's not there, and if all of a sudden we've got teams that continually disappoint, where Tennessee, can't get its offense out of its funk. Ole Miss has already taken a loss to Kentucky and running out of opportunities to make statements. If they don't win in Baton Rouge, there's another one on the table. To show you the other side, presenting the ACC presenting the ACC's three candidates, as you just did, isn't even having to make an argument for those three teams, because the thing about a 12-team playoff, and they don't talk about this a lot, is you got to put 12 teams in the playoff.
It's just like basketball, right? We got to come up with 68 teams.
And by the way, I know you talk to him and I know you listen to, that is a Gary Parrish bit that makes me chuckle every single time. The Eye on College Basketball podcast with him and Matt Norlander, two very dear friends of mine that I've worked with for a long time. When we talk about these bubble conversations, you're like, they don't look like a tournament team. They don't look like a tournament team. And GP says, the thing that you don't talk about, you got to put 68 teams in this tournament. And the same can be said if, as you are saying, and look, that is trusting Clemson, Miami, and SMU to all win the games that they are favored. And everything that we've seen about this season says that, a Syracuse, a Virginia, the teams that are popping up, a Boston College. Pitt. Oh, my goodness. Yes. There are teams that are good enough, because one of the great storylines of this season that I do believe in terms of an overreaction to the results, the good teams are not as good and the bad teams are not as bad. And we've noticed some things in the wagering market that suggest that there are there are entities that are uninvested in sort of the day-to-day of college football that have just decided like any ugly dogs, you just bet them. Because the good teams are not as good,
right,
and the bad teams are not as bad. The whole sport has become a little bit more compressed. There's a lot of different things we can point to that most of them make sense. Transfer portal,
sure,
NIL, fluid nature of all these things. But when we look at trying to project out Clemson, Miami, and SMU, like I respond to you, absolutely the ACC has it on the table for them. But then we're also asking these teams to do what very, very few teams have done in this sport this season, and that's win all the games they're expected to win.
Chip Patterson is joining us as he does every Wednesday. The thing is, I've always said this about, like, if you're really good, like if you are truly one of those teams, you'll win the games you're supposed to win, right?
Yes.
But if you're built on the schedule, then you're probably not going to. So while I think the more I've watched Clemson, the more I see a team that will win the games they're supposed to win, I'm not completely sold on Miami because of the amount of turnovers they commit. I mean, frankly, I was actually less surprised they came back to beat Cal than I was that they came back to beat Virginia Tech. Why, I don't know, but I was not that it was never in doubt. It just wasn't surprised. The SMU thing I think would surprise me, but their schedule the rest of the way really shouldn't bug them at all. But again, are they truly one of those teams? And if they're not, they won't win them all because
right.
it doesn't take much to lose a football game. Ask Alabama. So let me just flip to that, because it was obviously not a great weekend to be a top 4 team in the SEC unless your name was Texas. And I think Texas was idle, so they didn't even play, right?
Texas, yeah, there were 8 teams in the top 25 that were off, and those 8 coaches have never loved their athletic directors and league offices more than when they realized that they had missed the blood moon that came over college football last Saturday.
All right, so first of all, congratulations. I know your old colleague Barton Simmons has been at Vanderbilt. Congratulations to Clark Lee, and in what is just I don't even know how to describe the win. It's obviously a monumental upset, one of the biggest in college football. But they've actually looked like a much better team. We didn't believe it when Virginia Tech went to Vanderbilt and lost. We ridiculed Virginia Tech. Nobody is ridiculing Alabama for losing to Vanderbilt. They're certainly criticizing them, but it's not like, well, you must be a laughingstock, because I think we've seen Vanderbilt play much better. Didn't they take Kentucky to 2 overtimes? And we know Kentucky's a pretty good football team.
Yeah, they took Missouri.
It was Missouri to 2 overtimes.
And look, then they did what teams that are on the climb do. And I think that this is like going back to real quick, like Cal, you probably weren't surprised because you really wondered if Cal was good enough to step on the throat.
Right.
And Cal's not good enough to step on the throat. They started playing conservative. But, Vandy didn't handle it well. They end up losing to Georgia State the very next week. There was a lot going on there. But talking to Barton, he's like, they are a couple plays away from being 5-0, and they physically whipped Alabama at the line of scrimmage in a way that was really impressive. And I love the way that Barton talks about Diego Pavia, because on the outside, the assumption is Vanderbilt. I mean, the name is Vanderbilt.
Right.
It's a private school. It's, got all these posh alumni. But the program they're trying to build is the guy from the New Mexico Military Institute who had 0 FBS offers, who goes to New Mexico State. They are trying to really build a Vanderbilt program that is unafraid of the big teams in the SEC. So yeah, back to the Virginia Tech side of things. Like you just got beat by a team that if you drop the 2024 Vanderbilt Commodores in the ACC, I mean, that might be an 8-win football team.
I agree with you. We didn't believe it then. We were like, God, Virginia Tech, how did you do that? And then we realized that, after the fact, which is maybe why we should not have any opinion about whatever happens in week 1. Tennessee lost at Arkansas. not that Missouri. Missouri was an underdog to Texas A&M, so it really wasn't an upset at all.
No, getting plastered like that is. I think
the last time you and I talked, you basically mocked Missouri anyway, which is fine. Right. So it's not that big of an upset. They were an underdog. I mean, I don't think Texas A&M is great, but most people didn't think Missouri was great. They were just ranked really high. So let me forward this to this week. So Ohio State is whatever Ohio State is ranked. Oregon is ranked whatever Oregon is ranked.
It'd be 2 and 3. Okay.
That's not bad, right? Okay. And I'm sure the Big Ten is very excited. So Ohio State is playing their first, I'm going to, with all due respect, the University of Iowa here. Ohio State is playing the first game that there is a chance they could lose, and we are now in week 7 of the college football season. It's a great game. Looking forward to it. I think Ohio State has one more game like that left on their schedule. That's it.
At Penn State?
Yeah, that's it.
Yep. And
I think they'll handle Penn State because I think Penn State is not quite Missouri House of Cards, but in their own way, House of Cards. How do we look at Ohio State, Oregon, other than great game? Both teams will be in the playoff because neither team has too many difficult games left on their schedule after this.
Oh, I think this is massive on a couple of levels.
Big game.
Number one, both of these teams are in pursuit of a national championship.
Right.
And what you learn about yourself in matchups like this is so, so important in how you're trying to navigate what you are hoping to be a 14, 15, maybe even 16 game schedule.
Yeah.
What you get out of this game is invaluable as a team. Because Oregon got run all over by Ashton Jeanty. They've had offensive line problems. Like they have handled business well against UCLA and Michigan State, but you could make the same argument about, this is a real test for Oregon, a team that coming into the season, we all had up in there in that top 4 conversation.
Right.
The way that everything was set up, it was going to be Georgia and Ohio State and Texas and Oklahoma. And then, as everything started, you started to downgrade the Ducks a little bit. Like, what a chance for Dan Lanning to get that win. Dan Lanning's 20-0 against unranked opponents, 7-5 against top 25 teams. Oregon, throughout its rise, has been a bit player or the antagonist to the protagonist. You run through it. They were the team opposite Cam Newton. Mm-hmm. They were the team opposite Urban Meyer, an Ohio State team that was down to its third quarterback. They were the team that even in Chip Kelly's very first season, they made it to the Rose Bowl, but you were playing opposite the Ohio State University. Last year, they were just the other part to Washington's magical run. Like, what a chance for all of a sudden Oregon to be the superhero,
right,
and take down these juggernaut Buckeyes. Like I think that there's a lot that is sort of like big picture, really, really interesting about this game. The talent level, these two teams are not going to play many games where they face another one. This is the type of matchup that you are going to have to win multiple times over in the span of 1 month to win a national championship. That's why all of these kind of games are so important, because you're going to have to do it time and time again in the new expanded playoff era. So I'm really fired up. And one last thing on Ohio State, and talk about hasn't been tested yet. We have a theory that, especially with Chip Kelly as the new offensive coordinator, with Will Howard as the new quarterback, what we have been tracking has been quarterback designed runs. There was almost nothing in the first 4 games. There was a little bit more and a little bit more. And Howard's got a big body. He can be a part of a quarterback run game. Chip Kelly does like to run the quarterback when he has a quarterback that can do so. We suspect that Ohio State is taking a page from last year's national champions, who treated their first 7 games like absolute preseason football.
Right. Absolutely.
Jim Harbaugh ran a spring game playbook. Well, sorry, the other coaches, since Harbaugh was suspended for the first games of the season. But Michigan did nothing.
Right.
They did absolutely nothing until they got into the back half of the schedule because they didn't have to.
Yep.
Well, Ohio State's going to have to beat Oregon in their own house.
Right.
So I'm excited
and it's a seeding game,
Oregon,
right?
Yeah.
So if Ohio State doesn't win this, Oregon has the inside track for the Big Ten title, right? Ohio State is going to be, I guess we could see this game twice, to be perfectly honest. Yep. If Ohio State's only loss is at Oregon, then the chances of us seeing this game again are, I think, pretty good. Maybe they lose to Oregon twice. I don't know. I think Ohio State's going to win this game, but I do find the whole thing fascinating. But the truth is that it's very likely that both of these teams, regardless of the outcome, will be in the playoff because there's just not that many losses left for either on the schedule. Like
we think.
Yeah, again, you're right. If you're 100% right. So pure conjecture on my part. Penn State, you and I talked about this last week, and I just said they appear House of Card-ish to me. So after this game at Southern Cal, which I don't know if Southern Cal is great, this might be another win for Penn State. But after this game at Southern Cal, trip to Wisconsin, you know how I feel about Wisconsin. I've always thought they're overrated, but they do have Ohio State and Washington left on their schedule. So I know Penn State's ranked very high right now, but what do you like about the Nittany Lions?
I love what they've done offensively to create more explosive plays with their new coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki. It hasn't really shown up in like Drew Aller passing stats, but I think that's a problem of wide receiver development more than it is an issue of the quarterback itself. I mean, they still have a really good offensive line. They run the ball well, and their defense is just absolutely tremendous. They've got a guy named Abdul Carter who might be the top pass rusher taken in next year's NFL draft. And they do that thing that the really elite defenses do, where it just piles up on you throughout the game. And the more desperate that you get in terms of the score and the way the game leverage is set up, the more that you've got to drop back there in obvious passing situations. Penn State just gets after you. And it just snowballs out of control where you just don't really have anything left. I think that they have an extremely high floor. I think they have a limited ceiling when compared to the very best teams in the country. But they, the thing about a 12-team playoff is you got to put 12 teams in there. And when I'm talking about the very best teams in the country that have something Penn State doesn't, the list is like Ohio State, Texas, half of Alabama, and that's it.
Georgia? Not Georgia?
Georgia does not have that kind of offensive dynamism either.
No.
Like Georgia, the way that they have been handling their business, Georgia is
on the field, not on the police blotter.
Well, I mean, listen, Colby Young got suspended for his latest incident. Running out of bodies. I talk about Penn State's wide receiver deficiency. 2 players that were in spring practice that were expected to be top 4 wide receivers have been not one's been dismissed, Ra Thomas, another one's suspended for domestic issues. We're about to have a situation where Georgia's just handing the ball off to a star running back the same way Penn State is.
All right, Chip Patterson, before we, by the way, I just want to point out Ohio State's non-conference schedule. Akron, Western Michigan, and Marshall.
Yeah, again, Michigan 2023 plan.
They played ECU.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So that's, of course, an embarrassment. But again, I keep saying this. People, they lie when they talk about the schedule you play matters. It doesn't matter. It's only a tiebreaker, and it's only used as a tiebreaker when it's convenient to the people who want to. So I'm sure you've read about Project Rudy. Which I read and devoured. It does incorporate a lot of the things I have thought that this is where we're headed. I am just curious as to what you think about Project Rudy. And I've said I don't think it'll ever happen for a reason I'll give you at the end of this, but I'm just curious what you think about Project Rudy.
I need to be honest with you.
Okay.
I haven't read it all.
Oh
yeah.
It's similar. It's a
so I've gotten the summary, and I've obviously gleaned the conversation. I've been in the workroom as the editorial team is discussing it. And a colleague of mine who is of the insider variety, who is of the hotel lobby, chat with administrator variety.
Okay.
He made a great point that I'm going to agree with until he uncorks it publicly. I won't throw him out here,
That's
but
fine.
He's like, I just get the sense that these conference commissioners and athletic directors are going to hear pitch after pitch after pitch and then just go do it themselves.
Right.
That they're just going to take their favorite ideas from Project Rudy and college sports tomorrow and the college super student athlete football league and whatever other 14 slide pitch deck they get shown in a boardroom. They're going to listen to them all, and then they're just going to go do it themselves.
I agree.
And that's kind of how I think. When he said that, I was like, well, then there's interesting ideas in all of these, but
100%.
Just that sounds like they're going to end up doing their own thing anyway.
They will end up doing their own thing, but having read the entire proposal twice, the entire story, Ross Dellinger at Yahoo Sports wrote it. I think the piece is great. I think there's a ton of potential in this particular thing. The reason why it will never happen as it's been presented, even though there's a lot of merit to it, is because the two most important people, Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti, would have to cede one thing they never want to cede, and that isn't so much control, it's superiority. Because what this system will do will be to elevate financially other conferences. And that is one thing that those two entities have zero interest in doing. And that's the way I look at them. You may be different, and that's fine. But that's my cynical way of looking at it, because if they were really concerned about the entirety of the sport, it all depends, I guess, on what we view. What is college football going to look like 5 to 7 years from now? Is it going to be more inclusive or more exclusive? And I think the trajectory we're going on, we are way more exclusive than inclusive, and this will at least incorporate the top half of Division I, and I don't think they are interested in that at all.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like a lot of people with money and a lot of executives seem to view this as a gold rush.
Right.
Everyone.
Oh, I'm with you. There's an ugly side to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like everyone's got their own, and these ex-Disney executives and these ex-private equity people and these I'm like, that's media moguls and financiers.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm real feeling real good about this.
Are they worse than conference commissioners?
Well, I mean,
or university presidents?
At least the university presidents have their feet on campus, at least it does seem like a lot of spreadsheets. Like, hey, I'll tell you where we got a lot of money that has been untapped here in this sector. Yeah. I don't play the. Right. I don't play. Look, I didn't even have to take a math to get my college degree. Okay, AP stat grade was good for me, and that's all I needed for my communication studies degree.
I think my favorite part of the whole plan, and we'll say goodbye on this, is that having become such a fan of European football, I've always looked at college sports as the ideal location for promotion and relegation. Not professionals, not even our current U.S. soccer system, because people, you pay expansion fees. There's no way David Tepper paid $300 million, right, to buy into MLS. Well, he doesn't want to drop down to the second tier of U.S. soccer. He don't want to risk that. I didn't invest all this money, and you don't have that. You don't have that in college sports, but I think it's the closest thing we have to the European model. Anyway, Chip Patterson, I'm sorry to drag you in on that, but it's always fun to talk to you, and we'll do it again next week. I think, do we have Champions League? I think we have Champions League football.
Next week we're still at my 2 o'clock is still 2 o'clock this week and next week, and then the week after that, my 2 o'clock becomes a 1 o'clock.
All right. Thank you, man. I'll talk to you next week. Peace.
Sounds good. Y'all be well.